The app on Lila's phone was called Spectrogram, and it promised to enhance spiritual energy in photos. It was a stupid download, a late-night impulse fueled by cheap wine, and the crushing boredom of her small town. The old Blackwood Cemetery, with its weeping angels and toppled headstones dating back to the 1700s, seemed like the perfect cliché place to test it. The iron gates were perpetually rusted open, a silent invitation. The air was cold for October, a damp chill that seeped through her leather jacket. Moonlight, pale and sickly, filtered through the skeletal branches of the oaks, casting long, grasping shadows. "Okay, let's get this over with," she muttered to herself, her breath pluming in the air. She found a particularly dramatic backdrop. A large, winged angel, its face eroded by centuries of rain, one stone hand pointing accusingly at the earth. She positioned herself with her back to it, pouting for the camera. Click. She glanced at the screen. The standard photo was just her, looking bored in a graveyard. She opened the spectrogram app and dragged the image into its interface. A progress bar shimmered, and a soft, ghostly chime echoed from her phone speaker. The image flickered, the colors inverting for a split second before resolving. At first, she saw nothing new, just a sharper, slightly more saturated version of her selfie. Disappointed, she was about to close the app when a movement in the background caught her eye. A shadow near the angel's base seemed to writhe. She zoomed in. Her blood turned to ice. There were no shadows. There were figures. Pale, translucent shapes standing amongst the headstones, their faces indistinct smears of light, all turned towards her. Dozens of them. A silent, watching audience she had been completely unaware of. A nervous laugh escaped her lips. "Good special effects," she whispered, trying to convince herself. It was just the app layering in pre-rendered ghosts. It had to be. Then her eyes dropped to her own shoulder, and her heart stopped. Resting on the shoulder of her jacket, just beside her neck, were two pale, grayish hands. They were solid, real, with defined fingers and grimy nails. They weren't spectral or transparent. They looked corporeal, cold, and heavy. They were gripping her, possessively. A strangled gasp tore from her throat. She spun around, frantically swatting at her shoulders, her back, expecting to feel something. But there was nothing there. The graveyard was silent and empty. Her own frantic panting was the only sound. She fumbled with her phone, her hands trembling so violently she almost dropped it. She brought the screen close to her face, zooming in until the pixels blurred. The hands were still there, and now she could see more. Thin, emaciated arms extended from the sleeves of a dark, tattered jacket, leading back into the gloom behind her, to a figure that was barely more than a deeper patch of shadow. A figure the app had somehow made terrifyingly visible. A figure that had been standing directly behind her. This was no glitch. The chill she'd felt wasn't just the night air. She heard it then, a soft, wet, rhythmic sound. Shuff, shuff, shuff. It was a sound of dragging feet on damp earth. Close. Lila broke into a run. She didn't look back. She crashed through dead leaves and stumbled over hidden tree roots, the guttural sound of her own sobs mixing with the relentless shuff, shuff, shuff that seemed to be right on her heels. The cemetery gate, her beacon of safety, seemed a mile away. She burst through the gates and onto the deserted road, not stopping until she reached her car. She scrambled inside, locking the doors with a frantic click. Chest heaving, she pressed her forehead against the cool steering wheel, tears of relief streaming down her face. She was safe. It was over. Slowly, she lifted her head and glanced in the rear-view mirror. Reflected in the glass, sitting directly in her back seat, was a man. His skin was a waxy, deathly gray, his eyes sunken into deep, dark sockets. He was smiling, a wide, lipless grin that showed too many teeth. And his hands, those same pale, grimy hands, were resting on the headrest of the passenger seat, as if he'd been waiting for her to notice him all along. Lila screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the sudden, deafening roar of the car engine turning over by itself. The headlights blazed on, illuminating the empty road ahead. The man in the mirror leaned forward, his cold breath frosting the glass between them, and in a voice that was little more than a dry rustle, he whispered, "You looked so lonely. I thought you could use a friend for the drive." The car jerked into gear and began to accelerate down the dark, lonely road, carrying her away from the world she knew, the steering wheel turning on its own, guided by an invisible, chilling force.